welcome to a brand new video. Welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. Today we're going to be talking about some of my ultimate favorite books that just remind me of spring. So I've got about 15 different books here that range all the way from adult to middle grade to graphic novel. I even have some manga here to talk about with you guys, so there's definitely something for everyone here. Most of these books I have actually read that I just pulled off my shelf. A couple of them, the covers just absolutely remind me of spring even if I haven't read it yet. I thought they deserved an honorable mention, so hopefully you should be able to find a book recommendation out of this video, and let's just go ahead and jump in, starting with the adult books. This one may come as absolutely no surprise to you. I've seen this on multiple other people's list. That is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I adore this book. First of all, the cover just obviously looks very springy, but this is one of the more heartfelt, whimsical books I have ever read. Even though there is like an anti-Christ character in this book, he is extremely humorous. All of these kids in this orphanage are just so sweet and caring, and literally this is the best fluffy light read that I will probably recommend out of all of these books. We have this man named Linus whose job or secret mission is to go to this orphanage and kind of report back to the higher ups about, is this orphanage good to keep? They've heard things about it that aren't so good. They may need to shut down the orphanage, and let's just say he ends up falling in love with these kids. I just cannot describe it to you without giving anything away, because this is more about like atmosphere and emotions rather than plot. If that is you, if that's what you love in books or what you're looking for in a spring read, look no further, because I am obsessed with this one. This is my favorite book that I think I read back in 2020. It is 5 stars, all the 5 stars, so please pick this one up. I love it. It's just so sweet. I also have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you guys have not read this book and you saw the trailer for the movie, please hurry up and read this. It was definitely a little bit slow in the beginning, but the ending made every single slow sentence or slow part worth it for me. It takes place on a marsh in North Carolina back in the 60s, and this girl is accused of murdering someone in the town. So that is all I will say, but it just gives you very springy, even summery vibes with the atmosphere. The marsh girl is very into science and wildlife and animals, and just the feeling you get while reading this is definitely spring and definitely even summer. So I feel like this is a perfect read for spring. It is a little bit more light on the writing and the story. Like I said, the plot isn't super deep, it's not hard to read, and it's very easy to get through. Next, I have A Million Junes by Emily Henry. This one is a magical realism story that I read a long time ago. I still think about it to this day. It's the first Emily Henry I ever read. I know Beach Read and People and Me on Vacation is super popular, but I don't know why her young adult titles don't get as much hype, because I love them. She writes magical realism so well, and this is an enemies to lovers story. So we have 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, whose families have this long history of just hating each other. Honestly, I can't remember why, but there's also a little bit of like creepy, mysterious elements to this. I don't read romance very often, which is why I think this book just gives me all the springtime feels. If you are a person that really likes fantasy like I do, but you don't really like a ton of romance, I surprisingly really did like this one. Also, because this girl's name is June, that could be why it makes me think of spring and summer. So yeah, if you've checked out Emily Henry's newer adult titles, please go back and read some of her backlist. I don't talk about these books enough, but her young adult backlist is really good. Another young adult fantasy novel, which is really hard to find fantasy novels that remind me of spring. This one is the top one that I could keep thinking of that kept coming to my mind, is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. It has been such a long time since I read this. In this book, we have Laszlo Strange, who's obsessed with this long lost city of weep. He's a librarian, so he's done all his research, and he's determined to find that this city is real and that this place actually exists. So he kind of goes on this self-discovery, but also this adventure and journey of finding very interesting creatures and friends along the way. And all I can say is this writing is absolutely breathtaking. Her writing is so amazing. This is the only book I have read by Laini Taylor. I don't know why I haven't gotten on the hype train more with some of her other books. Even though this writing is light and fluffy, reminds me of spring, it does still have purpose to it. It's not like this drawn out book that is difficult to enjoy because there's too many details. It's just very, very good and such a unique book, a unique read. If you're not a fantasy reader, still give it a shot. I feel like this is one that people just really enjoy for the atmosphere. These next 3 books are still young adult books, but the covers just scream spring, and even the stories as well. But if you're more of a cover by person, sometimes like I can be, these stuck out on my shelves. And this next book is one that I am so stoked to read this month. I hope I get to it. It is called A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy I. Lin. Look at these. I got the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, so it's absolutely stunning. Even the inside is this neon pink with like a teapot. For Ning, the only thing worse than losing her mother is knowing that it's her own fault. She was the one who unknowingly brewed the poison tea that killed her mother, the poison tea that now threatens to also take her sister, Shu. When Ning hears of a competition, masters of the ancient and magical art of tea making, she travels to the imperial city to compete. The winner will receive a favor from the princess, which may be Ning's only chance to save her sister's life. Obviously, I am just loving this cover, but if you are also a tea lover or a fantasy reader, this just sounds absolutely phenomenal. And I've already seen the cover for the second one. I think it even comes out later this year, if I'm not mistaken, or early next year. If I like this one, I don't have to wait very long. But yeah, for obvious reasons, this reminds me of spring, and I absolutely cannot wait to dive in. The next book is, surprise, surprise, a contemporary romance, but it is a sad one. I love sad books. I started reading this one and I was like, okay, this is one that's going to take me a while, that I'm definitely going to have to read on its own, like not with another book, and just solely focus on this book. It's called You've Reached Sam by Dustin Thao. Oh my gosh, if this is not a spring cover, I don't know what is. But we have our main character whose boyfriend passed away tragically, and she's just in this deep dark pit of depression, and she one day calls his phone and just wants to hear his voicemail or his voice message one more time, and instead of hearing that, he actually picks up. So I think there is some magical realism elements involved in this. I'm really unsure, but I'm definitely going to be picking this up in the next couple months because I loved what I read. It already made me so emotional. So if you're like me and you don't like super light fluffy romances, but you like a little bit more, I guess, thought-provoking books that are still contemporary, this one is going to be so great. This is one of those books I know is going to have a purpose and be really hard-hitting. If you've had any death in your family or your life at all, even if you haven't, I feel like there's going to be a lot of good things that are relatable to this. Definitely a sad spring story. Of course, I could not film this video without including The Gray Seer by Kim Liggett. Do not let this cover fool you. This is a deep, very dark feminist story. Think about the Hunger Games, but more feminist, and it's very dark. But for some reason, this cover reminds me of spring, and I believe when they first start this games, the girls are supposed to fight until the death, and I believe it starts out in spring and summer, and then we go into winter, so you very much have like those out in the wilderness kind of camping vibes, if you will, that makes me think of spring. This book is actually one of my absolute all-time favorites. The ending made me cry. I wanted more from the ending, and I don't know why we haven't seen any more Kim Liggett books. You may not be able to see this very well, but the end pages actually are flowers, and then on the inside you even have the different seasons that have their own title pages with the flowers. So again, a very aesthetic book, as well as You've Reached Sam if you're looking for more of like a cover buy or something that just looks really spring. And then we are going to go ahead and dive into the middle grade, which I feel like is the ultimate springtime vibe feeling. The whimsy of middle grades, the covers, anything and everything you can think of that has to do with spring always makes me think of middle grade. I need to read more middle grade because I only have a couple here, but these are such springy time books. And the first one, which I am gonna admit that I have not actually read this, but the movie is absolute spring. How many times can I say spring in this video? Who knows? It is Kiki's Delivery Service. This is also a very, very short book. The vibes in this book, I mean, Studio Ghibli is so aesthetic as it is that I would almost recommend watching the movie first and then reading this just to get that feeling when you read this book. The story is so heartfelt and sweet, and I love our little cat Gigi, who has the best humor ever. This whole story takes place on the seaside of like this small town village, and obviously Kiki learns to fly, and she's this little witch who just does favors for the town, and I just get all the springtime feels when I think about this story. And our next book goes right along with this one. It is Howl's Moving Castle. This whole vibe and aesthetic again of just Studio Ghibli. Both of these are just a wonderful like blend of romance and humor and summertime and gardening and spring. There's little elements to both of these that just are absolutely beautiful and breathtaking for this time of year. I feel like most people would choose classics, and I do have a couple classics here. The next three are classics, but instead of like Jane Eyre or like more Pride and Prejudice, I think of Alice in Wonderland. So I'm kind of going off of the middle grade theme here, but this specific Puffin edition, how does this not scream spring to you? I am obsessed. Obviously, Alice in Wonderland is very whimsical. It's fun. There's so much to this story. There's plants, there's flowers. If you do not have this edition yourself, I mean, look at the end pages or the inside, and then the front. Are you kidding me? It's this very gorgeous periwinkle color. So yeah, very obviously spring. I feel like I'm showing off my most aesthetic books right now, but I love Alice in Wonderland, so I couldn't film this video without mentioning this. And the next book that I do want to talk about, another obvious classic choice, is Anne of Green Gables, especially again this Puffin Books edition. They are absolutely stunning, but I wanted to mention this, but also the manga version, because I feel like there's so many cool different versions of Anne of Green Gables, but these specific books or editions just have me in the spring feels. You guys know the story of Anne of Green Gables. It's a little bit more light, contemporary, fluffy read. If you want a little sneak peek into this manga, the dresses they wear, the clothes, the braids, just the whole springtime gardening feels. You even have pink on the cover. Little Women usually makes me think of winter, Christmas time, but when my friend Kendall gave me this Seasons edition, how does this not say spring to you? Look at the pink sprayed edges, and you can even take the dust jacket off, and it's this gorgeous die cut, and it's pink. I'm not usually one that is super into classics, but Anne of Green Gables and Little Women I just grew up with and I'm obsessed with. Moving on to our next few books, which is a graphic novel and a couple manga, starting with the Sprite and the Gardener. Hello. Again, how many times can I say this is obviously spring looking, but even the inside is the absolute perfect color palette for spring. This story was so cute, and I really loved the representation in here, especially for different body types. I thought this was such a good kind of picture book for middle grade, but also just really good representation. It's massive. Like I said, it's more of a picture book, and it's very short, but it's one that I'm just going to be picking up every single spring. The story itself was so sweet. In this book, we have Wisteria, who is this adorable, sweet little garden sprite who is trying trying to help this human save their garden and trying to figure out the long lost magic of the sprites. For some reason, the humans have taken over this world and the sprites have lost their magic. It even gave me a Secret Garden vibes, which is super cool. I can definitely tell some inspiration for this was drawn from that. If you don't pick any of these other books up, please pick this one up because it's my go-to for every spring now. The next manga I have is one that is a standalone, but it is really big, so this isn't like a huge commitment, and that is Wolf Children. Is this not the cutest thing you have ever seen? Like I said, it's short. It is like one standalone. I believe there may even be a movie for this, if I'm not mistaken, but this is such a sweet story of a lady named Hannah who fell in love with a college classmate who turns out to be part wolf, and they have kids and are expecting their first child, but the father tragically passes away, which leaves Hannah on her own to kind of navigate this single parent life. But in this book there is some gorgeous illustrations that just remind me of spring. There's even a couple scenes where she's gardening with her children, and it's one of those bittersweet contemporary stories. And so if you've never dove into manga before, this one is very simple. This is not hard to read. There's not a lot of text in this one. So yeah, if you're looking for a new manga or you've never read this one, kind of had me tearing up in the end. Another really bittersweet romance that I love so much. A lot of people don't see the ending or the twist coming like I did, and it's so sad, but it's so good. It's called I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. Yes, I know that sounds crazy, but if you read the story, trust me, you will understand what it means, and I'm not going to spoil that for you. So in this book, we have a girl who's actually dying of pancreatic cancer, and this boy who is just kind of like this depressed guy, and she actually brings some joy into his life even though she's basically dying. And let me just tell you, you will not expect what happens in this book. It's so intriguing. Again, a very nice short manga. I mean, the cherry blossoms, hello, spring. I may even reread this one myself because it's so good, but it's so sad. And last but definitely not least is Yona of the Dawn. I've actually only read this first volume, but this is definitely a bittersweet, kind of sad, but also really cool romance. In this book, we have the princess who surprisingly witnesses one of her family's murders, and then she ends up possibly falling in love with someone, and it's hard for me to describe this without giving too much away. If you're looking for something a little bit more adventurous that includes princesses and dresses and still really aesthetic for spring, but you also want like that adventure side to things, this would probably be a really good choice. And I need to buy more of these volumes because, like I said, I've only read the first one. I was very intrigued to keep going and see what happens. Alright friends, I think that is it for this video. I hope you were able to find maybe a new spring recommendation, a new book that you've never thought about. Maybe you own one of these but never considered it a spring book, and now you want to read it and consider it spring. I feel like I've done my job well. I hope you guys end up picking one of these up. I'm definitely going to be rereading or reading one of these this spring before summer hits. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, supporting my channel. I love you guys so much. Before you leave, go ahead and leave me like a flower emoji, any flower emoji. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.